Hey, folks, welcome back to another episode of Artist Stories of Middle Georgia. I'm your host, Victor Rigoli. I'm back in the studio here and have a wonderful guest with us today, Courtenay Puckett Raffalovich. I don't know if I butchered that or not. You can correct me if I did. But anyway, Courtenay, thank you for being on the podcast. Um,
Thanks
it's
for
an
having
honor and
me.
privilege, yeah, to have you. I know you've got wrapping up a show that you had there at Macon Arts Alliance, which is great. Um, but I want to share with everybody a little bit about you from your bio here. Courtenay is a mixed media artist with a professional fine art practice since 2017 and nearly 2 decades of experience as an arts educator since 2006. She holds a BFA in art education with concentration in drawing and painting from the Lamar Dodds School of Art at the University of Georgia. Go Dogs! And a master's in art and design from Kennesaw State University. In 2018, Courtenay was selected as a curated American artist. She held her first solo exhibition, Living Waters, in 2019, followed by Journeys, a celebration of mixed media, in 2021. Most recently, she presented her third solo exhibition, Movements, at the Art Institute of Atlanta in 2023, and her recent show, Embodiment, was hosted by the Macon Arts Alliance in June of this year. Originally from Lawrenceville, Georgia, Courtenay now resides in Macon. Beyond her studio practice, she enjoys being outside, traveling, teaching students through art and tenants. Welcome. Thanks
Thank
for being on
you.
the podcast. Yeah. So, what made you move down to Macon? You're originally from Lawrenceville. So,
Well, originally, my former husband was a pastor, so we followed the different church opportunities.
okay.
Yeah, and yes, I've always just made art on the side. So, especially like I was a stay-at-home mom forever with my kids. So, I just made art in the margins of time.
Okay.
With I have two kids, so that's kind of how it all continue. Of course, like I went to school for art, and
Right.
it's just
Right.
kind of always been a part of me. In the early days, I just worked in my sketchbook, like small things, commissions for folks. I would just draw alongside the kids when they were coloring, and
Right. Right.
just kind of did it in the kitchen
Yeah.
alongside of the
Yeah.
laundry and daily life.
Yeah. Squeezing it in where you
Squeezing it
can.
in,
Yeah.
yeah.
Kids are at
And
school, or hey, everybody's out of the house. I got a
yep,
couple hours, and hey, yeah,
yes,
yeah,
yes, exactly. So I
yeah.
think that's how everybody does
Oh
it.
yeah, oh yeah, most definitely.
Yeah.
I've interviewed a lot of artists, and they have a full time gig, I guess you'd call it. A lot of them work a full time
Hmm.
job, or they're if they don't, then they are raising a family, and they're got all the activities of dealing with children, from school to sports to gymnastics or whatever, and then trying to squeeze in your art career can be very challenging. But where
Yeah.
where where does it all begin? How far back, in your life would you say, from childhood, that you had an interest in art, or is this something as an adult that you major in art? Evidently, you must have had some type of interest prior to going into college. So where does that
Hmm.
begin?
Well, I came from an art family.
Okay.
So to me, growing up, art was a real thing that people can do to make their living. So I did have, of course, like natural barriers that people do and have, just being in our culture, going through school and what people say and
Right.
people who don't understand. So in the back of my mind, I always enjoyed art. My mom is an art teacher. She teaches high school art. And my uncle was a fine artist, is still a fine artist. He was a painter, showed in galleries all over, has his own like multiple studios,
Oh wow.
that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Now he's doing sculpture and ceramic pieces. Um, so I always kind of saw him being able to do that for a job. So it seemed like, okay, I love art too. I should do
Hey,
this as
you can
well.
do it. I can do it too. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
So in that way, it was kind of inspiring to
Yeah.
see that. And then, of course, my great grandmother, she was a fashion designer in Atlanta at the turn of the century and made beautiful gowns for the upper class. So we have a lot of her work in the house, and not to mention like my sister's, she was a photographer. She's doing something different now, but she did wedding photography for a long time. So it's like, we would get home from school and my mom would go to ceramics class. My sister would go shoot somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was just like,
Yeah.
we just did art and it made
Yeah.
sense. So of course, when I was young, I never really felt like I was gifted or any different than any other kid who just liked to
Right.
paint a little.
Some like sports, you did the art thing,
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So I balanced my creativity with playing tennis. I grew up in a tennis academy.
Okay.
So I kind of did that with my time growing up. And then, of course, in high school, art was already familiar. So I took all the art classes available. My high school had a robust art department. So I was able to really dip my feet into different processes. And I knew I loved art because it just didn't feel like a pain to do. I enjoyed it.
Right.
I
Kind
couldn't
of
wait to
came
go to,
natural for you. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
math and English, you always feel a little stressed in those classes.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I did.
I did too. Yeah.
And feeling the homework and the burden of getting your work done. But when I
Right.
went to art class, it was like easy. I felt like I wasn't even in school. I could disappear into my thoughts and my own internal world. And I just enjoyed it. So I took leadership positions through there. And then in college, I said to myself, there's no way I'm going to be an artist. I'm going to do my own thing. And I decided to change and do a business degree instead. So I got to be about a junior at taking business law and accounting and all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of dawned on me one day that I was in the
This is
wrong
not what I want to
place.
do.
This
Yeah.
is not really what I want
Yeah.
to do. So at that point, I switched degrees and went over to art education.
Okay.
That afforded me the opportunity to learn like mastery level in all the different disciplines
Right.
because the program, requires you to be able to teach. So from there, when I graduated, I got a job teaching elementary school art. And then the kids came along and,
Mhm.
now my kids are a little bit older, so it
Okay.
affords me more time around the
Right.
house and with, they're at work or with their friends, or so I have like larger chunks of time to work in. So you know,
Yeah.
that's nice. The nice thing about having a creative art practice is it can evolve through different seasons. You
Right.
can make it
Right.
be big and sustaining as you need it to be,
Right.
or you can like kind of shrink it down and do other things. It can kind of fit in however you want it to grow or not
Right.
grow. So,
Right.
yeah.
I can see that, with a lot of different artists, even myself too. I mean, there's just things that change over time and it goes in maybe in a different direction as
Hmm.
well, so that's cool. So your kids are older. You said like friends and work. So I take it, they're in their middle to upper teens,
Hmm.
maybe. So
Yeah.
that's a good thing because they don't need mom's attention, to help them with every little thing as some artists I've interviewed have a lot younger kids, and so it eats up more of their time. So it's wonderful as a parent when you get your child to where they're kind of independent and they're able to do some things for themselves, and so that frees us up to do other things that we like to do too.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's pretty
Hmm.
cool. So you were influenced by your mom and your uncle. Is your uncle still alive? Is he still doing art? Where is he at? What's you want to name drop in case
Oh,
some
sure.
people might know who he is? And
Yeah. His name is Anthony Raffalovich,
okay.
and he's in the Grant Park area in Atlanta. So
Okay.
he has a
Good.
studio house and a studio and galleries, and he is a phenomenal artist. So, yeah.
Well, when this is over with and I get everything wrapped up, I'm going to Google him and
Oh,
check him
yeah.
out. Yeah, check out his
Hmm.
work. And I encourage other folks, that are listening and watching, is to check him out. It's great to have people like that in your life that
Hmm.
have done. I've been there, I've done that. You
Hmm.
can do it too,
Hmm.
proven it, and this is how you can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I appreciate about his work is that he just follows his own intuition as to what he wants to make as a fine artist. And
Right.
I kind of saw from what he was doing, it's like he did not necessarily chase decorative art as much or the commercialization of art. He now, especially, he's working with like marrying ceramic pieces with wood and wire and creating human sculptures and things, and it's
Hmm.
really interesting. So I think I just was like, okay, like I have a voice in art and I can say what I want to say.
Hmm.
And that gave me like a lot of confidence. Like it didn't have to match the couch, and what I made didn't have to fit into the trends at Hobby Lobby. I
Yeah.
could,
Right.
whatever kind of the distinction, like from him, I just saw that there was a distinction and I had the choice as to which path I wanted to go.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. I like that. Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about your art, and I mentioned doing a little mixed media. So let's talk a little bit about that. Share that if you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
So I started experimenting with combining different materials
Hmm.
because I like to draw. I like to do printmaking. I like to do watercolor. I like to work with acrylics.
Yeah.
I like to use this material called Conte crayons, and they are sort of like a pastel stick, but they break down in water, so you can get
Oh.
a lot of like gestural marks like you would get
Okay.
with charcoal, but you also can make it kind of loose and fluid like you would do with watercolor. And so I think that was kind of my third show that was Journeys into Mixed Media.
Hmm.
That was one where I started really like playing and mixing with my materials and just trying to see the capacities of each one and
Right.
how they would layer. So really from there, I now I'm really able to like wield their powers. I mean, it kind of sounds funny, but
Yeah.
it's like, you kind of have the mastery of the material, and I can, now I'm to the place where I can really like get it to say what I want it to say.
Hmm.
And in that process of experimenting, like I also just learned how to let go and the surrendering that happens when you make art. Like I purposely use inks first on my canvas
Okay. Yeah.
because that allows like the most fluidity and the most like opportunity for me not to have control. Because what I like to do with the inks, I use acrylic inks, and they're the most light fast I've found, and they work really well with water,
Okay.
whereas some of the other inks don't do so much like
Right.
that. But
Yeah.
so I float water on my canvas first, and then I lay in inks. So I just squirt and drip and, layer in different colors. And then I just let the natural process of evaporation just happen. And so what's left
Hmm.
over is all the water is evaporated, and then the pigment is left on the surface of the canvas. And I really feel like, I can control what colors I put on. I can
Hmm.
control a little bit like where I place certain colors. And in that process, I really just do it intuitively. I just think to myself, I feel like turquoise, or I feel like yellow, or I feel like green,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I just kind of grab colors like that.
Yeah.
And then after it's done drying, I just look at how the inks have laid in, and that is the beautiful surprise, is because they move in the water
Hmm.
themselves,
Hmm.
and I don't babysit them. Like I lay them down and I just say like, okay, inks, do
Do
what
your
you
thing.
do
Yeah.
your
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
So it's like a way I can, surrender. And then when I approach the canvas again, I just turn it different ways. I look at how the colors have interacted. Sometimes you get beautiful transitions that you weren't anticipating. Sometimes a color that was first on the upper left now has migrated all the way across to the bottom right. Like you just never know how they're going to play. So from there, I basically isolate out the most interesting parts of the ink, and I try to preserve their unique qualities. So whether it's a transition or whether it's a feathered edge or some kind of interesting visual texture that's happened, or like, lots of, spontaneous results in that. And then when I lay in my composition for whatever, like I've done the same process with landscapes and houses and, portraits, and But I always like start with that ink layer because it gives me that surprise that like my brain naturally would not have made that happen. My brain
Gotcha.
is really
Yeah.
limited as far as what
Right.
it knows because it's like what I feed it. That's all it
Right.
knows,
Right. Right.
what it's experienced.
That's right. That's right.
And so
Yeah.
I find that like if I can disengage my brain a little bit and just kind of go with my intuition and follow my instincts, that part of the process has afforded me the most openness to play and creative expansion and that sort of thing. So, yeah, I just lay in the composition, whatever parts I want to preserve or get rid of. And then I just add in the acrylic paint on top of that to make the subject happen. And then I lay in all my papers. I really have, I'm a little bit of like, I don't want to say hoarder, but I have a lovely collection. I think all artists do, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah.
Lovely collection of like papers and little pieces of fabric. And I like to go to like estate sales and find little pieces of lace or like old letters or maps of, places and
Right. Right.
just interesting things. So I just dig around in my box of interesting things. And I just kind of select whichever ones either fit the color palette, fit the composition, fit the correct shapes. If the composition feels like I need a heavier visual element, I look for darker scraps of paper.
Right.
If
Right.
it feels like I need some more transparency happening, I'll select papers or fabric that has transparent elements, and then I just layer it in. And usually I draw on top at the last step to preserve like the mark making because I've found that like if I draw earlier, I mean, sometimes I do draw earlier, but I really like the textural quality of the drawing materials. So I really want that to be seen and not covered up. So I try to draw last on top. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, I appreciate you kind of talking a little bit about your process and how you go
Hmm.
about, creating, because I
Hmm.
know a lot of artists, we all have a certain process we go through in
Hmm.
creating our art. I do oil paintings, I create a lot of landscapes, but there's a process that I follow in doing it.
Hmm.
Some people like to sketch it out with a certain color of paint, thinly, and sketch it out. I like to use watercolor pencils sometimes, to do that, to kind of
Hmm.
get the drawing down and kind of move from there. So I appreciate you sharing that with us. And so when you are going to work on something new, um, where does that inspiration come from? Like it's like, okay, I'm going to create something here. I walk into my studio. Do you just kind of look around and you see something and says, "Ooh, wow, I'm getting some good vibes and inspiration from that. What can I do with that?" I mean, where does that
Hmm.
come from, and how do you go about? Or is it something that you saw in a magazine or a scene that you saw out in nature, or what?
Well, it's a little mixture,
Okay,
sometimes it's just like you just got to pay attention to life because
okay,
every day life is offering you these beautiful gifts,
yeah,
right?
right,
So you can look outside your house and you can look at your tree. And at one time of day, it looks like a normal tree. Other times, the whole tree is navy blue.
yeah,
How
yeah,
magnificent, right?
right,
And then
right,
another time you look out and that same tree is flooded with oranges and bright neon pinks. And it's like, what a gift. So I really feel like I try to pay attention to those little like moments of gifts that occur every single day. I remember one time I was just pouring cream into my coffee one morning and I just stopped in the moment just to observe and I just thought, how beautiful the way that cream like mixes in this beautiful
yeah,
swirly
yeah,
little design in the
right,
top of the
right,
coffee. So it's like just, in that way, it's like I have a toolbox of these beautiful aha moments. And sometimes, and for example, this particular season with series with the banana trees, that just happened because my neighbor just happened to plant a banana tree in their yard and just daily life coming in and out of the driveway. I
right,
got to see this
right,
beautiful banana tree. I didn't even know what it was. I had never really seen one
right,
before.
right,
So I was like Google imaging it, like, what is that? Because I was noticing all the beautiful shapes and light, the way the leaves were moving in the wind and just different aspects of it. And it just kind of like, ooh, captivated me just by its beauty. So I kind of follow the beauty like that. And, combine that just with artists. I think no matter all, no matter what artist you look at through art history, all artists are commentators of the culture they live in.
Hmm.
We're taking things that we're surrounded with, things that interest us, things that captivate us, things we want to say as a response to our culture we live in.
Right.
And we're trying to, somehow that part in your heart and soul, like that comes out on your canvas. So I feel like that's a very natural response for me personally. I'm
Hmm.
kind of a internal thinker person. And no matter what I'm making, even if it is just a house illustration for like a commission when someone just wants their house painted, I
Right.
mean, that might seem like it's just a house, but to me, knowing that I just mixed the coffee in my creamer that morning and took that little moment of beauty, now I'm thinking about tans and mocha colors and browns. So now those colors are naturally finding their way into that house illustration. So I kind of like combine things together. For example, one time, a few years ago, I remember I took my kids, now this is when they were smaller. I took my kids downtown to get some ice cream in the middle of the day. And my son chose this ice cream. I think it was called like Superman ice cream. So it had these like really vibrant, like neon-y fun colors. And the way the ice cream was marbled, I thought, oh my goodness, I've never seen ice cream like that. And he was enjoying it. And I just really like tucked it away in my heart as a sweet moment. And sure enough, like later that week when I sat down, I was working on a piece. And I just was naturally gravitated towards those colors that were
Hmm.
found in that ice cream. And
Hmm.
I made the correlation, like as I was painting, I was like, wait a minute, I don't normally choose this color. I don't normally
Right.
go for
Right.
this. I wonder where this is coming from. Oh my goodness, it was that ice cream that was inspiring at the moment,
Right.
so it's kind of like, that's kind of how that happens for me. I lived in South Georgia for like 10 years, and I was particularly always amazed at the way the land changed, the way
Hmm.
the light happened
Hmm.
across fields and the planting cycles, and having a lot of friends who do farming, just
What
seeing
what
the
part of
world.
South Georgia was it in?
Sumter County down in
Okay.
Americus
Yeah. Okay.
and Plains area.
Yeah.
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 But like that'll never leave me. It's kind of part of my visual memories of, and just the livelihood that people like lived off the land, and
Hmm.
what the farming community meant to me at the time and still does. So it's just like lots of little life experiences that
Right.
go into my little visual toolbox
Yeah.
inside of me.
So, I had thought, and you were talking about your son and the ice cream and the colors and stuff, and just life experiences and what have you. Do you, when you see something like that and it kind of inspires you, do you take a photo of it for reference later on, or you just kind of make a note, or it's
No,
just all stored here in your head?
no, it's just all up in my brain.
Okay.
Um, I mean, every now and then I'll take a picture. Like, you're just walking through a place and it's kind of a
Yeah.
fast walk and you're just going to
Yeah.
snap a quick picture.
Yeah.
But as far as like creating art, I sometimes will use references, but a lot of it I do try to work out just from my own visual memory.
Experiences and
Yeah.
memories. Yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. Okay.
So, I mean, some things are difficult to try to figure out,
Yeah.
you know?
That's true. That's
Like,
true.
I remember one time I was trying to paint a branch coming off of a tree. And I just couldn't figure out how exactly is that branch attached to that tree? Like, does it go lower? Just trying to work it out. And for that, I was like, okay, I'm just going to look up a picture, and
Yeah.
I think,
Yeah.
that helps to kind of fill in the gaps. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what do you find most challenging about the art you create?
Um, hmm. Well, it really
Or
is.
challenging as what do you find most challenging as an artist, to be an artist,
Hmm.
you know?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, to make the art is my greatest joy.
Mhm.
The creation of it, the process of bringing something from my mind into the real world.
Right.
Like, that's what I can't wait to do, whether that's painting or drawing, or I like to sew as well with a sewing machine. That's the same process. It's the same idea with cooking and being creative in the kitchen.
Right. Right.
So like that's what I look forward to. And it's not, I've worked over the years to eliminate as many stressors as I can. And now I've found a process that really works for my personality. And
Okay. Okay.
so I
Yeah.
don't really get stressed in the studio so much. The things that are stressful, or most challenging is like finding avenues for sharing the work.
Right.
I feel like now I am a licensed artist with commercial art,
Hmm.
and I have a gallery and have had like more galleries in the past. I've done online sales. I sell through my website. Um, I try to do at least one local place, but like that's always going to be part of the conversation, trying to figure out where your art fits most, because at the end of the day, you are trying to pay your bills.
Right. Right.
So I think that's the most challenging, is like being
Yeah.
persistent. And, at the very beginning of my career, I felt very discouraged trying to get into shows and not being accepted, trying to get into, trying to find like which type of event would be most suitable for my kind of
Right.
art. There's a lot of
Right.
different kinds of
That's
events.
so true. Yes. Yeah.
Trying to find like what's the best fit,
Right.
you know, thinking about the client, what kind of people would like to buy my work, trying to find the events where those type of people are.
Right.
So, that has been challenging over the years. Of course, the other big challenge is just the time. As you run your own business, there's lots of back end stuff that has to happen. That's not always fun. Like,
Right.
who
Right.
really wants to just sit down and, do the calculator and figure out all the numbery things all
Oh,
day?
I know. You'd rather
It's
be
like,
creating beautiful pieces of art, right?
yeah, right.
And that is so true. I mean, I find that challenging, and a lot of artists do, is the business side of
Hmm.
the art,
Hmm.
and the dedicating the time and effort and energy to promote your work. And you mentioned having a website and some sales there. Where do, and we're just talking about the business side here a little bit. In selling some of your work, you find your website or social media to be more successful, like Facebook or Instagram, in selling your art or promoting your art,
Well, I found over the
or is
years,
it in galleries? You know,
yeah, it's a mix, of course. You're always trying to do a mix to be balanced.
right,
If you
right,
only say one avenue, then you're kind of, in my opinion, kind of shooting yourself in your foot, because that one avenue can
right,
disappear. So I found that the best way is to build an email list. So there's lots of different ways to build an email list, but at the end of the day, essentially you're trying to connect with real people. So everybody has an email. So I have found that, by me sending out emails, then I can direct them to whatever way is happening now for them to be able to purchase, or I can answer
right,
questions, and
right,
through the emails you can kind of build a little bit more of a relationship with your folks. Also, I just like to do things in person. So I try to like talk to real people
right,
and meet
right.
real people.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
make
yeah,
relationships.
yeah.
Um,
Making that
so
connection with
mhm,
people,
mhm,
because I think it's so important for us as artists to do that, because they want to know who the artist is and
mhm,
the story behind the
mhm.
artist. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's good.
But yeah, I do have like Instagram sales. I'll share work on Instagram. I'm not as faithful as I used to be with that, but um, Facebook, those are all your local people, or my
Right,
Facebook is like all my real life friends
right,
usually,
right,
right? And then
right,
my Instagram has my real life friends plus a whole bunch of people that I don't know in real life.
right, right,
Um, so work in the galleries, I know the curator, and then I don't really know all the clients that the curator has.
right, right,
So that's a little bit of a separation there. I don't have access to the curator's email list.
right,
I don't
right,
know who bought the work.
right,
So it's like when you work with a gallery, you have to understand that is part of it, and that they do take commission, which is fine, but you just
right.
have to like understand, how the galleries work.
The
They
dynamics of that, yeah,
Yeah,
how that
that
works.
relationship.
Hmm.
It is a relationship. They have to be able to pay their rent off of your work.
Exactly. Right,
So, you can't be mad about them taking a percentage or whatever. That's just how
right,
that works in a
right.
gallery. So,
That's right.
but what is nice about that is it does expand your reach more.
It
You do have
does.
the opportunity to hopefully connect with an interior designer who's shopping, in the gallery space. Hopefully you can get a commission also
Hmm.
from the representation there. Um, yeah, and then of course selling on your own website is nice because you can, the sales completely go to you,
Right. Right.
and you just package it up and ship it on, and
Yeah.
you know, and the nice thing about the website is like, when I very first made it, I felt like, oh my gosh, there's a lot to keep up with. I found myself checking it every day and wondering if all my fonts were correct and
Right. Right.
stressing myself out. But now I realize like it's just another tool,
That's right. Yeah.
and just let it be what it can do, and
Yeah.
it can wait for you as long as it needs to wait for you, or
That's good.
or you can
Yeah.
pedal it as much as you want
And
to pedal
that's
it.
right. That's right.
So
That's right. And we're gonna include your contact information, your social sites, your website in the show notes. Put it on Facebook as well as on YouTube. So people want to reach out to you, they've got a way to do that, and they can check out more of your fantastic art. I would like to share some of your artwork, and I'm going to bring that up here on the stage so you can kind of talk a little bit about your artwork. This is one of the pictures that you had sent me, and it looks like a banana tree there in the corner in the back.
mhm, mhm.
And some of is there anything you'd like to say about this particular picture before we move on to some of the paintings?
Oh no, my friend Madison we did a little photo shoot in the studio. So she took a number of these pictures we're going to be looking at for this current
Okay.
series. So yeah, and my friend Ashley gave me the banana tree. She happened to, when I was first fascinated with them, I had told a couple of my friends, "Have you guys ever seen a banana tree? I am mesmerized by this plant."
Oh,
And she's
wow.
like, "Courtney, I have one." So she ended up digging me one out of her yard, and I put it in the pot just to
Well,
appreciate it. So
that's awesome. Yeah,
yeah.
that's great. She's able to do that.
Mhm.
All right, let's talk about these.
Okay, so the one here on the left, this is a diptych. It's called Community. And this piece um, is showing the relationship between the network of banana trees. And to me, it's symbolic in a lot of different ways. You have the grouping, banana trees grow in a group, a cluster. Their root systems are all interconnected. And so,
Okay. Okay.
so I was definitely trying to capture some of the connectedness down in the bottom portion of the paintings with the root
Right. Right.
systems.
I can see that. Mm-hmm.
with
Yeah.
without me like specifically illustrating them, I was trying to suggest them in a gentle
Right.
kind of way. I used the map papers of the map that I had for the line work on the left and a little bit on the right. And you can see that the painting on the right side, those plants are big and mature. They're torn on their leaves and they've been really weathered. And you can see there's three growing there, but then you can see the small little pup on the bottom part attached to the main one. They call them pups
Oh,
when
okay.
they first spring up. But the process is the bigger plant dies away and it kind of puts all of its energy into the new little pup
Oh,
growing
gotcha.
from
Gotcha. Yeah.
its base. Yeah. So
Yeah.
after the plant bears fruit, it basically withers down and then produces a little pup to take its place. And this piece was transformational for my own self, thinking about also just in real life as humans. This very
Right.
much
Right.
mirrors like parenting
Uh-huh.
and generations, because as a parent we're basically working ourselves out of a job.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
eventually we're putting all
Yeah.
of our energy and effort into our sweet babies, and then one day hopefully
Push
they'll
them out of the nest and they're on their
yeah,
own.
and then
Right.
we
Yeah.
die back and they continue on and the
Yeah.
cycle continues. So I felt like this concept was important to have the diptych, just showing
R-
the connection between, even that just shows the connection there.
Right.
Um,
Right.
the part on the left, it's not as filled in. It's more loose, a little bit more abstract. The inks are playing a little bit more in the background. And I just felt it's like whispers of maybe plants that used to be there, plants yet to come. So it's kind of this idea of like time passing. Um, so that's the diptych on the left. Do you
Okay.
have any questions about that?
Um, what what paint did you use here? Is that is it watercolor? Is it acrylic or is it ink or
Yeah, so the ink
okay.
is Mostly, I did a lot of water, so the ink colors are really washy and fluid looking.
Right.
So I diluted the ink a lot. Mainly the most all the color you see is from the ink. I mean, I went in with acrylic paint afterwards and just sort of added an outline and suggestion of leaves
Okay.
and
Okay. Yeah. Gotcha.
but most of it is the ink. I tried to just leave it really loose and
Now,
organic feeling.
and I should ask this earlier. So when you're creating this, is the canvas or surface laying flat, or is it always, in a kind of a vertical position?
I do the inks laying flat.
Okay.
So I have a canvas, an easel actually that like rotates flat.
Gotcha. Uh-huh.
So sometimes I'll do it like that. But a lot like these two, I just laid out on the floor.
Oh, okay.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, I just have to wait for all that ink to dry.
Yeah.
And then, I'll
Yeah.
bring it up.
Okay.
So yeah.
Cool.
hmm
Yeah. All right. Now,
Um,
are these a couple pieces that were at your show there at Macon Arts Alliance?
yes.
I thought so. They looked familiar when I saw them. So yeah.
Yeah. So these are just some supportive works of mature leaves. When I laid in the inks for this, I isolated them mainly to the leaf areas. So that's the main movement on these two pieces. And here I just wanted to show, like, I like to use interesting papers, patterned papers, decorative papers. So you can see I kind of blocked in some of the negative space with the papers. When I do my mixed media pieces, I never want the added elements to be the star of the show. I
Yeah.
want each component to be like really nicely balanced and really lovely union where there's no part that's overshadowing another part. It
Right.
kind of balances itself like a whole, like a symphony. You can't, like if you go to a symphony, you don't only hear the drums.
Right. Right.
Like you have this beautiful balance of the instruments and each one kind of has its moment to shine.
Right. Right.
And so that's the way I approach the pieces. And like someone asked me at the artist talk, how do you know if it's done? And partly it's like I'm just listening for the conversations of the materials to be happening where each one is having a way to talk to another piece and no one's overshadowing anyone else. So it's like very harmonious in that way. So, that's kind of part of the goal when I make the works. So these, I was just interested in showing the undulation of the way the leaves twist and move and catch the light in different ways. Yeah.
Right. Right. Beautiful. Both of those are just beautiful pieces. And these are pretty good size paintings, aren't they? How big are these? What's that? And do you like to paint large and do large works like that?
Yeah. Typically,
Okay.
I really do like to paint larger than smaller.
Uh-huh.
Because I like to just like be able to move my arms more.
Right.
I feel like more interact,
And
personally.
doing what and the way you create the art, it's I guess conducive to using a larger surface,
Yeah.
to allow that color and that ink and water, the movement, I guess you'd say,
Yeah.
around on the surface. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but how big are these?
These are 16 by 20.
Okay.
So
Okay.
this is like the smallest I really like to do things.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
commissions and stuff, I'm okay to do like a little smaller. If they're like watercolor commissions, I
Right.
like to do 8 by
Right.
10 on
Right.
those. But
Yeah.
yeah, this is about 16 by 20 is about as small. I
Okay.
like to do for the mixed media. And then the ones we saw previously, those were 24 by 48. So
Okay.
they were quite a bit taller.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay. Good. Good. And I brought these up on a different screen over here, so I'm kind of looking at them in a bigger, so I can see them a little bit better than what I'm seeing on my main screen. But
Mhm.
yeah, so occasionally you might see me look off to the side, and that's what I'm doing is I'm checking out the bigger painting or the bigger picture, so I can see it a little bit better. But
Yeah.
anyway, yeah, there, and of course the one on the right is your banana plant or
Yeah.
banana tree. Yeah.
Mhm. And
which is
it's
cool.
just hanging out there with some of the other finished pieces.
Probably
Sometimes,
feeling some vibes from the paintings there, and
mhm.
just yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and the one
Yeah.
here on the left, now this process was slightly different. I
Okay.
decided to activate the background first through paper, and I laid down a tons of different like sewing patterns and maps and all sorts of papers first. And then I added like oil pigment sticks on top, and I drew, and I really like tried to, activate the surface a lot more, um, because sometimes I just want to mix things up. So
Right, right.
I wanted to be a little more spontaneous with my marks, not so controlled. So I just really let go of the subject at first and just drew all over. Um, and then after that, I put in inks afterwards. So inks were second. And then I, of course, just looked at how they how they dried, and I decided, oh boy, it'd be nice the way it works to have the leaves in this direction, kind of lower half.
Mhm,
And then
mhm.
I added in that interesting paper on the bottom left corner. That was
Right.
some wrapping paper that I had hoarded from
Oh,
many years
okay.
ago.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. And this one, you have the new unfurling leaf at the top, kind of
Right.
rising up out of the center. So I wanted to really articulate how that looks because it really is beautiful, the spiral like unfurling.
Mhm, mhm.
It catches the light really well. So I wanted to like very clearly illustrate that part.
Mm, that's so cool.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So this piece is the namesake of the show. This one's entitled Embodiment. And for this piece, it was the largest actually that I've ever made. This is 48 by 60. And
Wow.
actually,
Yeah.
when I was working on that size, I thought, oh, finally, I have room. That was like,
Yeah.
so from this, actually, I'm like, oh, I've just got to start working bigger. So I think coming up the rest of this year, if when I start to work again, I'm going to make some small ones because I want to continue the conversation using the banana tree.
Right,
Um,
right.
so I am going to do some smaller prints and some drawings, but as far as paintings go, I am definitely going to be working really large. And in fact, I would really like to make some big ones, like floor to ceiling, and like use different tools because the bigger the painting canvas size, the different tools you
Right.
need to
Most
use.
definitely. Yes, yes.
So I
Yeah.
really enjoyed, I had like a big spackling knife and a large squeegee I was using for this. And I changed over some drawing materials. I did a lot of like drawing materials there at the bottom to show like the earth, kind of suggested earthy
Right.
bits. Now, the significance of this painting for me is that it's the encompassing of all of what I was trying to say in all the different works. So this series for me, as I have been getting to know this plant, I realized that a lot of the seasons of the plant, the natural cycle, really mirrored the human cycle, human life cycle as well. So you have the new sprouting and you have these mature leaves, and then you have all these dead and decaying leaves. And, humans, that's the same way. There's things in our
Right.
life we have to let go of and change and say no to and no longer work for us as we
Yeah.
evolve and as we
Right. That
change.
evolution that we
Exactly.
go through. Mhm.
Yeah, and so for this one, I wanted to keep the dead leaves on the plant just and have them be there strong, just as strongly placed as the mature leaf and as the new leaf, just showing that like when we're able to fully accept all the parts of us and all the parts of our history and all the things that, have been part of our story and our life, and we fully embrace them and we can sit with them and we can learn the lessons that life was trying to teach us through those experiences. We're not hiding them, we're not ignoring them, we're fully aware of them. That allows us to grow the most
Right.
and
Right.
fully accepting all those shadow parts of us,
Right.
as they say. So um and then I felt like it was important for this particular piece to have the ribbon of the yellow through the background, just as a symbol of hope and encouragement, especially how the plant is like pointing up to the sky. I wanted that light blue to kind of represent hopefulness, and the whole plant is rising up out of the mire and the muck. when I was actually working on this particular piece, for my master's program, I was actually researching about different cultures. And in my research, I came across the understanding that in Hinduism, they use the banana tree very symbolically as part of their spiritual worship.
Really
Yeah, it
interesting.
was really
Yeah.
interesting. And they
Wow.
actually use yellow as part of their ceremonies. So I thought, oh, for sure, I've really got to honor, I'm not Hindu. I don't totally understand all about that those religious aspects, but I really felt like what a lovely correlation that I can just kind of nod in honor of them and that particular culture. So yeah, I tried to bring that in as well. So. Mhm.
Yeah, this is a great piece, a powerful piece, having
Mhm.
you talk about it and explain makes so much sense,
Mhm.
and thinking about us as individuals, and people, and you could just see, rising from the ground and, the growth that's there and reaching up and the evolution that this tree goes through,
Mhm.
and, thinking about plants, it's okay that there are some dying leaves on this plant. It
Mhm.
doesn't mean that the plant is actually dying. It's just part of its process that it goes through, you know?
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
exactly. And that's really the lesson that this whole series teaches us, that and that's one of the reason why I positioned it compositionally right in the middle of the paint, right in the middle
right,
of the surface there,
right.
because I wanted to show the visual strength and the stability that we don't have to be ashamed of things that have happened or, parts of us that have gone away now, or it's like just you're strong, you're rising up, and the health of the plant is still vibrant, it's still thriving, and
Yeah,
that's part of it.
yeah. Yeah, I think this is my favorite piece. Having you talk about it and everything, I've learned so much, about this, and yeah, it's my favorite piece.
Thank you.
Yeah, this whole thing. All right, and I think this might be the last one here on our little
Hmm.
slide. So,
Hmm.
of course, again, we've got the banana tree over there on the right, but I love the one on the left as well. And let's talk a little bit about this one.
Yeah, so this piece it's called Letting Go. Actually, it's really the similar concept from the other piece. This piece, I really wanted to highlight the way the dead leaves were so beautiful. That was something that really captivated me about the plant, is that as the leaves die, they kind of curl under in a really beautiful kind of way. And I really wanted to concentrate on like drawing them and kind of seeing the way they turned. And I felt like they were just as beautiful as the mature leaves.
Right,
Um,
right,
this piece in particular, I was playing with the idea of letting go and what that process feels like and how it's seen and represented in the plant. So you can see there's like two larger leaves up there. Both of them are showing signs of decay on
right.
the edges, and I didn't want them to be fully dead yet, right?
Yeah, yeah,
um, but they're on their way, and it kind of dawned on me like it's okay to let go of the plant is okay to let go of the leaves that no longer serve its overall health,
right, right.
and it's
That's
okay.
powerful. Yeah, that's powerful. Yeah,
So I wanted to show that that's like a process. I also decided with my papers in here I put some papers like under the darker section of the top leaf. It's really not easily to see really on this picture, but there's like handwriting under the shadow parts.
oh, okay.
And
Yeah,
then that same handwriting paper is down later on the stalk as it moves down
gotcha.
on the composition. So I really felt like it was necessary to add in the handwriting just as a bridge to say that the plant is always communicating. It's always trying to tell us what it needs. And I feel like that's a lot of times how it is in relationships and with our own self, if we really try to listen to our self and people we're with and all the things there's always communication that's happening, even though at times you don't really pay attention to it. And the more that I will just say me, the more I ignore myself and don't listen to myself, eventually that, communication that's happening on a soul level and a heart level, that is trying to speak. and it will get your attention. And so that's why I moved the
So
handwriting
true.
down
Yeah, so true.
later onto the stalk. So it's like loud and clear. Hello, pay
Yeah,
attention, you know?
right, right.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, essentially this was kind of my process of letting go and also just accepting like it's okay to say no to some things. It's okay to change. It's okay. So that's kind of how I process some of that self-acceptance in that process as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much for talking about some of these pieces here. And yeah.
You're welcome.
Well, what's next for you? What's on the agenda moving forward? Where do you see things in the next? I'm throwing out some goals for you here. 3 to 5 years down the road. What's on
Well,
the horizon?
yeah, I am still teaching art as an art
Okay.
educator. So I'm over at CFCA right now,
Okay.
over by the base. So I'm enjoying that. And I will continue to have conversations with this plant. I feel like it's really come into my life at a beautiful time, and I'm really not done having the
Okay.
conversations with it.
Yeah.
So
Right.
as far as my own personal fine art, you're going to mainly just see more banana plants coming.
Good.
I'd like to experiment with printing and drawing some more and some really larger paintings. And then professionally as well, I really am feeling a big pull to begin a pathway into art therapy. So I am gonna enroll in school again and get credentialed to be a LPC and kind of just see what doors open with that. I feel like I want to allow people a space where they can process feelings and process life and process traumas and experiences through using art materials. And I want to be able to provide a space for them to be able to do that. And apparently, I need to get credentialed to do that.
Okay. Okay.
So
Well, good luck with that.
thank you.
And I was thinking about the same thing, art therapy, when you were talking about these pieces, and I thought I learned so much,
Mhm.
and you learn a lot about yourself, and you could really use some of these in that process. I think,
Mm.
in what you had just said about these pieces that we showed, and I thought, wow, this would be great,
Yeah,
So
thank you. Mhm.
yeah, you could bring the banana tree and the painting that's next to it, the last, photos that we showed on the slide presentation, and talk about that kind of thing. It's just so powerful. Yeah. Good
Thank
good
you.
luck with that. Keep
Thank
us
you.
keep us informed as to how that's going, and I'd love to have you back, to talk a little
Yeah.
bit more about, hey, you're starting to do this, and if somebody's interested, how to reach out to
Oh,
you,
that'd be great.
etcetera. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And that's one of the things I try to do too is, 6 months, 7 months, 8 months down the road, because I want to give people enough time to, maybe they're moving in a new direction or they're trying something different, it might be up to a year, but just to get back together and say, hey, what's happening? How are
Mhm.
we evolving? How are we growing?
Yeah.
What have we shed, the old leaves, and
Right.
what, growing
Mhm.
into a beautiful, banana tree plant. So that's awesome.
Yeah, thank
Um,
you.
yeah. Yeah. So, I've got some random questions I'd
Mhm.
like to ask you. They're nothing to worry about. I try to ask everybody these questions as we kind of wrap up here a little bit. What's your favorite holiday and why?
4th of July.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Because there's no stress.
Yeah.
I mean, you don't
Don't
have to
have to go buy
coordinate.
a gift for somebody. You don't have to have people over for food. I mean, might have a
Uh-huh.
picnic or something, but
Uh-huh.
yeah,
It's low key, relaxed.
yeah, yeah,
Everybody's just smiling and having a nice
yeah,
time. You get fireworks in the sky and there's no burden about it and you can just appreciate where you live and
yeah.
so yeah.
That's cool.
Hmm.
What's your favorite color?
Green and blue and
Okay.
yellow. Yeah.
Okay.
Those are kind of
Okay.
my favorite.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. If you could have a superpower, what would it be?
Mm. Well, I do like the idea of flying.
Yeah.
So I kind of have like I don't know if this is because I'm a Sagittarius or not, but the traveling I kind of feel like I have a little bit of a wandering, traveling part
Okay.
about me.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
I love the airport. I love going places. I've been to many countries over the years, and I just love different cultures. And I feel like, man, if I could just fly, like,
Right.
that'd be great.
Yeah. It would be. Would be. Yeah.
So,
All right. Last little question is describe your dream studio, art studio.
oh
What would you
man.
have? How big would it be? What would you have in it? All that kind of fun stuff.
Oh gosh, you know what? I know the answer to this question. Have you ever seen Alexander Calder's studio in art
Mm,
history?
I don't think
The
so. Yeah.
Okay, you'll have to look it up.
Okay.
So Alexander Calder, of course, was the man who made the sculptures, the big mobiles and the shapes. So he had this, I want to say like airplane hangar, huge space, right?
Wow.
And the whole back wall was just all windows. And it was just like, so high and a concrete floor, a big garage door, kind of industrial feeling.
Right. Right.
I would love to have that. And then also kind of make part of it like open air where I can like wander like through a little secret garden I make with like the sound of water. Because
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love the sound of water and birds and smell of plants.
Okay.
Isn't that so funny? But I would just
Yeah.
have one end full of like plants and nature, and then
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
end industrial and lots of tall space. So
That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah, that would be a fabulous
yeah.
art studio.
Because then I
Uh,
could like have people over. I could set up tables,
oh yeah.
and I could like open the big door and spread tables out in the yard, and we could just like find things in the yardage to paint and to draw and
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
conversation, and it would just be like broad space, and I would really appreciate that
Yeah.
personally.
Yeah. You really got me thinking about what I would want, as
Yeah,
far
what
as
would
a
you
place to.
like?
Oh, that's a large space like that for
Mhm.
sure. A lot of light, natural light, storage room, because I'm in a bonus room above our garage. It's long, but it's
Mhm.
it's kind of narrow and
Mhm.
everything. So I'm constantly trying to move some things around. It's like, okay, let me set this over here and then bring this
Mhm.
over there and do what I need to do. So just having the freedom and the space of just having stations to where I don't have to move things around, that I can easily get to it and not have to step over things and turn a certain way to slide down a certain area to get what I need, kind of
Yeah.
thing. But having a lot of space. But I would probably want it. I like your idea of having it in a place where there's nature around so you can get some inspiration.
Yeah.
Mine would probably be close to the ocean, to the beach,
Mm.
because
Mhm.
I love marshlands and I
Mhm.
paint a lot of marshlands and beach scenes and stuff like that, landscape. So
Yeah.
I would love to have it close enough to where I can say, okay, maybe it's a few hundred yards away to the beach, and I just take time and walk out there and just sit in the sand
Right.
and listen to the ocean and see the
Yeah.
seagulls and just
You
take it all
smell
in.
it. Yeah, it's
Oh
just
yeah, I
great.
mean it's just
Yeah.
great,
I
and
mean,
be able to come back into the studio and say, okay, now let's create.
yes.
So yeah,
Yeah, it like fills you up on the inside,
yeah, it does,
and the
it does.
environment that you created.
Oh yeah, oh
I
yeah.
mean, for sure. At one time, I had rented some space outside my house because for so many years I had painted in the house. And I had rented a number of different studios through the years, trying to get some good light and some more space to spread out. And just like you were saying with the different stations, just have enough room to have like a shipping station, a photography station, a storage.
Right, right.
It really has been a lot of help over the years to expand in that way. But currently, I decided to move everything back into the house. So the studio is actually in like where a formal living room would be, like in a
Okay,
older style
okay,
house.
yeah,
Um, so it's working out okay now.
that's
But
good. That's
I can
good.
imagine if I start making really big pieces, I might have to rent another space at some point. So
Yeah.
anyway.
You're talking about, being in the house and where you said, where a formal living room space would be. I know a guy who's an artist, and I went over to his house a few years ago, and his living room, when you walk in, you got the little foyer area, and then there's this big living room. That's his art studio. I
Well,
mean,
that
he's
makes
got
sense.
the big easel in there, everything, and then they had like a little dining room, I think, off to one side. That became their living room,
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
thing. but it's like, gosh, she had so much stuff in there. It's just my wife would never go for that, because when I first started, uh, about 6.5 years ago, I was in the kitchen table, and about 2 minutes later, she said, "You got to go. I got to have my table back." So it's like I'm moving around, and finally I
Yeah.
ended upstairs. But yeah,
Yeah.
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 Oh wow.
Yeah, that really is. I mean, you know, if I get to be old, really old one day, and it's just like the kids aren't here, I'm not doing anything else except making art. I would just love to have like the same idea that your friend has, just make the
Yeah,
whole house a studio. Just have the living room turns into the workspace, the dining
yeah,
room turns into the shipping area.
yeah.
I
One
mean,
bedroom is
it's
storage. I mean,
yeah, I
whatever.
mean, it
Yeah.
doesn't matter, right? So,
No,
like,
no.
we don't have to fit into societal norms.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Well, I meant to ask you earlier, and you do teach art at the school there. Do you teach any private lessons or anything like that in your
Yeah, I
home
have in the
or studio?
past.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I used to rent a studio outside the house, so that was a
Hmm.
lot easier. It was actually kind of part of my business plan to do lessons, private lessons, group lessons. I've done kids, teenagers, adults, all the different age groups. Currently in the mornings, I'm still teaching my homeschool art classes for kids. So on one day of the week, I have elementary. Another day of the week in the morning, I have middle school. And then on Fridays, I do my high schoolers. So that is still happening. I do that before I go out to the school. So
Oh, okay,
just
okay.
trying to connect. I realized there was a big need in Middle Georgia for like art education
Right, right.
beyond just like YouTube videos. Like some
Yes,
parents who were doing
yes.
homeschooling really felt like they wanted some more curriculum and
Right.
learning goals and that sort of thing. So I do try to still do that in the morning. So,
Good.
but yeah, in the future, I'd love to be able to have a space. I'm not real keen on having strangers to my own house
Yeah,
personally. So I
I
would definitely
understand.
need to
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
be
Understand.
able to
Yeah.
to do that
Just
outside.
friends and family.
Friends and family's
Friends
fine,
and
but
family. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's great. Any parting words or any advice that you'd like to share from your vast experience of being an artist to anyone that might be out there that is just starting to become an artist, that's exploring it and trying to get their feet wet and that kind of thing?
Well, I think the biggest change that happened to me, the most meaningful thing, is that you have to you have to honor yourself enough to make time in your day to be creative, purposeful time. And that it's really easy for me personally to say, oh, I have a million other more important things to do than to sit down and color,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Right.
But that was a big change that happened in me when I started honoring that part of me that had the inclinations to be creative. Instead of shoving it down, I said, you know what? I want to honor myself enough to give this little part inclination, this part of me, time and space to nurture it. And I think that's the biggest life lesson, is to love yourself enough to nurture your own creativity.
Yeah.
And there's always going to be more important things, and there's always going to be something else pressing on you. But essentially, I also had to just reframe that phrase. Oh, there's something more important somewhere else. And then I realized, no, actually, the most important thing I can do is honor myself in this way. And that is the most loving thing I can do for myself in the day, because it brings me my highest joy. And so that I would just like to remind everyone that we're all creative, even if it just comes out in your shoe collection or your cooking.
That's right.
You might
That's right.
not all be a fine artist, but we're all creative. And
Yeah.
so if you can just find a way to honor that part of you and give voice to that and say yes to those inclinations, that would be the greatest gift, to appreciate beauty
Yeah.
in that way.
Great. Thank you
Yeah,
so much.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
for
you so
having me.
much. Yeah,
It
this
was
has been
fun.
awesome. Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. And I just wanted to thank you again for being on the podcast. And I want to thank everybody for tuning in and catching another episode of Artist Stories in Middle Georgia. Please like and subscribe on YouTube. Become our friend and follower on Facebook as well. But stay tuned, everybody. We got more artists coming your way. And we'll see you guys in the next video. Take care, everybody. Take care, Courtney.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to another episode of Artist Stories of Middle Georgia. We really appreciate our audience and would love to hear about other artist stories you'd like for us to share. Please email us or leave a comment. You can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Please like and subscribe.